Welcome to Books and Things with me. And today we're going to interview Kathleen Stauffer, who is that right, Stauffer?
That's right, Stauffer.
Thank you. CEO of the Arts Center of New London County. A lot of people probably haven't heard of the Arts Center, and that's why I invited her on here so that you can all know who they are, what they are, and where they're doing their fundraiser next month. Be able to get down here and offer some change.
That'd be great. That'd be great. The Pirate Party is held at the Mystic Arts Center. We'll be having it on April 25th, which is a Saturday night. We have a great silent auction. Park hopper passes from Disney.
Wow.
The Foxwood Producers Suite, 5 one-night stays.
Oh.
We have a beautiful pearl necklace from Malov's. The local community has been really generous. And last but not least, we have tickets to The Who.
Really?
The Who, yes.
They still together?
They're going to be on, I believe it's May 24th when the concert is. So really some great stuff. You can dress like a pirate. We're going to have a pirate fight on the Mystic River. The pirates will come down cruising on the Argia, and they'll have a pirate fight, and then everybody will go back inside, drink a little rum, and have a silent auction.
Oh my! I know one of my authors from the Kappa is going to be there. And she mentioned that the other night. We have somebody else sitting on the other side of the room, but she doesn't want to be on the camera. Her name is Laura. I would tell anyway. But yeah, she says she's been to these things for the last 4 or 5 years.
People go once and they really, I've never seen adults have such a wild time dressed as pirates. It really is a great time. And of course, it gives you a chance to get back in touch with the roots of this region, with, all the maritime history. And I was talking to the Mystic Rotary on Monday, and we were talking about the most infamous woman pirates of all time. And she pirates, as they were called in their day, people like Anne Bonny and Mary Read.
You don't hear about those people.
Well,
I don't, anyway.
Some of them were pretty fierce pirates.
Really?
In fact, Anne Bonny was married to a man named James Bonny and fell in with a guy named Calico Jack and decided she preferred Calico Jack to James Bonny. But when Mary Read and Anne Bonny and Calico Jack were captured, apparently Anne didn't feel that Jack had fought hard enough, and so as he was going to the gallows, she said, if you had fought like a man, you wouldn't have had to die like a dog.
Oh, shit.
Sadie the goat was feared by men and women. She'd walk around the streets of Manhattan headbutting people and mugging them.
Really?
And she loved a good bar fight. She loved a good brawl, and she once had her ear bitten off by a woman named Jealous Mag, and then took to cruising the Harlem and Hudson Rivers with the Jolly Roger flying, pillaging, stealing, and kidnapping from the rich mansions on either side of the rivers. But she and Jealous Mag eventually mended fences, and apparently Jealous Mag had pickled the ear and gave it back to her.
Oh, really? That's nice.
And then there was Back from the Dead Red, who faked her own death to get so she wouldn't be caught and hanged for her misdeeds. And the most successful woman pirate of all time was called the Menace of the China Sea. And her name was Ching Shi. She had become a pirate with her husband, who was killed at some point, and he had about 300 ships, 20 to 40,000 men, and she built up that army of ships called the Red Fleet, and by the time she retired, she had 1,800 ships and about, I think, 80,000 men. It was such a large operation that she had to create her own government with infrastructure and laws and even taxes to help pay the administrative fees of administering this large pirate fleet. So I guess when people say the only sure things in life are death and taxes, it's even true for pirates.
Now, were these pirate ships?
Yes, 1,800. It was the most feared force in Asia.
Been everywhere.
They offered her amnesty rather than deal with it anymore, and but she thought that would be she'd lose face if she surrendered. So she proposed to the customs official who had offered her amnesty that if they got married, she could then retire. And she lived to age 69. Apparently, it was a pretty happy marriage.
So again, wow. Well, that's more than I thought I was going to learn today. Now I'm going to have to go up and look some of this up on the computer.
She pirates.
She pirates. That's interesting, because you don't think of those. You think of just the ones that you know about.
Blackbeard. Yeah.
Blackbeard, yeah. And but that's very interesting. Wow. I'm stymied now. When is the pirate?
April 25th, 7 to 10.
April
7 p.m. to
25th.
10 p.m. at the Mystic Arts Center. And you can get your tickets at thearcnlc.org. And they're $65 a piece. And unlike a lot of events, the spirits, the food, everything's included for the price of admission.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really nice time.
Wow. I'll have to see if I can go. Just for kicks. Maybe I'll get a date.
And if you don't want to, well, I think you should. If you don't want to dress like a pirate, you can just dress in evening wear. But most people do dress up. People come the first time, they wear a suit, and the second year they dress like a pirate.
No, you're doing. Huh. Now, see, this is the first time I've even heard of it. And we were asked as a group to donate some books and for the silent auction, which we did. And your mom sent the pictures today, and it looks like a very nice basket.
Oh, it's a beautiful basket.
That's good.
Our group home managers compete with one another.
Oh.
The Arc New London County serves people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and we were founded by parents 63 years ago, because in those days, a lot of people are surprised about this. Kids with intellectual and developmental disabilities were not welcome in our public schools.
No.
And so you can imagine as a parent, grandparent, somebody says your child can't learn. These people knew their kids could learn. And so they passed a hat right here in Groton in a living room, collected $10.69 to create an education program for their children.
Oh, wow.
And so today we're a full service agency. We do vocational training. We help people find jobs. We help people find housing. We have a day program. We have a camp program. The Pirate Party benefits all of our unfunded programs, and we'll probably talk about that in a couple of minutes. But our group home, each group home gets into competition with one another to see who can create the most elaborate basket. And I sit there at my desk as they bring those baskets in, and then one after another, they're just getting bigger and better every year.
Now, how many group homes are there?
About 14.
Really?
And
that's in New London County?
It's in New London County in various towns, yes.
Wow. Because I know you were in Groton, which is where I met, where I was introduced to Art Center. And I was just amazed. I went to school with a guy that was mentally disturbed. And I was, oh my God, I think it was the first grade, second grade. He kept putting tacks on my seat. And I'd say, stop. And I'd talk to the teacher. The teacher talked to him. I don't think he stayed the whole year. Next thing I know, they pulled him out of school and sent him off someplace. And very, very unfortunate. He's a nice guy, but you can't do that all the time.
With the proper behavioral interventions and with some of the things that we know now, behaviors can really be modified in positive ways. People ask, what does ARC stand for? And the ARC is not an acronym. It was at one time. And what I tell people, I was just talking to a bunch of kids over at Three Rivers. They had a career fair for high school students, and it was we're always looking for counselors for camp. So kids who want a summer job, if you think you might want to work in social services, again, thearcnlc.org, you can just pull down the menu for jobs and fill out an application. But you know, what I tell people, especially kids, is even today, kids with intellectual and developmental disabilities are segregated from the rest of the classroom. And the families that started the ARC really believed in inclusion. And 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it was really the firm belief of medical professionals that people with a low IQ could not learn, that they really they would be better off if they were someplace else. And so these parents really fought institutionalization. The pressures to institutionalize your child were really intense. And these parents wanted their kids to live a full life and be fully involved in their communities. And so the services we have now, fortunately, because of the Education for All Children Act, kids with IDD are now allowed in the schools. They're allowed to stay there until they're 21. So you can imagine if somebody has a developmental delay, being in school until you're 21 makes a really big difference.
It sure does.
And then we'll help people with things like vocational training. What are your dreams? What are your hopes? And for example, our culinary school, which is right here in Groton, we have a Chef Tom. We have a little cookie factory.
Is that the one over on Thames Street?
It's over by it's Sacred Heart Drive. Yeah, it's right off,
Oh, okay.
right by Electric Boat.
Right.
And one thing that really sets the ARC apart is you can, even now in the state of Connecticut, petition for a sub-minimum wage certification. And you can pay people sub-minimum wage only if they have intellectual and developmental disabilities. So our board of directors finds it very offensive, and as a dignity issue, we pay minimum wage. And so as we train people for jobs, for example, Chef Tom over in Groton will talk to a chef at Mohegan Sun that maybe needs a line cook or somebody to do a certain kind of task in their culinary services, and that chef will tell Chef Tom what he needs. Chef Tom will train somebody who we feel, at this is in their professional training at a point where they can take a step up, and that person then will get moved to Mohegan Sun and have full employment in the community. People can be very independent if they have the right supports, and that's what we're always trying to do is have less reliance on government, more independence.
When I had my store in Gales Ferry, there was somebody used to bring in kids that had problems, and they would sweep the floor, they would keep everything nice and neat, and they wouldn't handle the register or anything, but they would take care of my store for me, and it was free because this town or state or whoever it was paying them, and they bring these kids in to work, and some of them worked for me like 2 or 3 months until they moved on to something else. But
Well, and do you know we now have cash registers that people can use. We just received a grant from the Eastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce for iPads, iPad technology for retail, because this summer we're hoping to launch a farm stand where people will be trained in retail services, they'll be trained in green farming techniques, and thanks to Chelsea Groton Bank and People's Bank and a variety of funders, the Community Foundation, we have an aquaponics, little aquaponics farm in one of our group home garages.
Really?
And Connecticut has to import 80% of its produce in wintertime.
Really?
So there's a huge market
Wow.
for locally grown. Foxwoods has expressed some interest in buying some of that produce, and then we will be training people in these new technologies, but also how to handle customer service, how to check people out, things like that. And with certain apps, people can pretty much do anything. Technology is really leveling the playing field for people with IDD. For example, I mean, if you have a house, we can equip your stove with a monitor that will tell you when to turn it off and remind you to turn it off. So it's really changing the world.
I want to read your mission statement. To partner with people living with intellectual and development disability for equal participation and inclusion in the communities of southeastern Connecticut. Vision, the ARC New London County will be southeastern Connecticut's leader in partnering and advocating for equality and of opportunity and equality of choice in partnership for full equality. I think that's neat.
Thank you. I appreciate your appreciation because there's a story even behind how we got there.
Yeah.
About a year and a half ago, we had come to the end of a strategic plan. And so the question was, what kind of strategic plan should we be adopting? What should we be doing? What does the community need? Because we were really created to provide for Southeastern Connecticut what people with IDD and their families need. And so our board embarked on a listening tour. We talked to the regional director of the Department of Developmental Services, which is with whom we do most of our contract work. And we talked to families. We have a lot of family members on our board of directors. We talk to the people we serve. We have an advocacy group. The Pirate Party and our fundraisers support this advocacy group so that people can learn to speak for themselves. advocate for transportation rights. They do fundraisers. Hundreds of thousands of volunteer dollars are put back into the community by people with IDD. It really helps turn this sense that, of disability on its head and helps people to see the ability. And that's what we like. So we said, what kind of ARC do you want? What should we be doing? We had every employee had the chance to write on a piece of paper why they come to work every day. And so we rolled up our sleeves, and over the period of a year, we rewrote our mission, our vision, and this whole call to help people live fully inclusive lives has required us to look at why we do what we do. Is a training program enough? No, we really need to move people into real jobs, into the community at real pay of minimum wage and higher. And that's a different approach to IDD services than you would have seen even 5 years ago. And the ARC New London County is one of 5 community of practice providers, or 8 rather, community of practice providers here in the state of Connecticut, and Connecticut is one of 5 states to have gotten a community of practice grant. Really, we are charged with reinventing services more efficiently for modern times, because if you can imagine, once the institutions were shut down, in many cases, we kind of created mini institutions. And now the time has come to say, if we really believe in real inclusion, what does that look like? And how are we going to help people live their best lives? And so we're actually pretty far down the road to reinvention before we got the grant. And the state was a little bit surprised, but it's really important, because today, even as we sit here, only 25% of people and families with IDD in the state of Connecticut who could use services are getting them.
Really?
So the need is huge, and it really falls to providers like us to take responsibility for serving as many people as we can, as efficiently as possible.
I think movies are helping you,
Yes.
because I've seen some children that have got some disabilities in these movies, and they're really playing these kids up and making them look like they can do things.
I've met some of those people.
Yeah, and that's neat. I grew up in a time when you put him in a closet, you locked the kid away because he couldn't do anything right. And Norwich Asylum up there, we used to lock people up and you never see daylight again. But there are people like yourself and your organization that find uses or abilities in these children.
And methods.
And I'm saying children, some of these people are 50, 60 years old.
Well, when I talk to high school kids, what I tell them is, people say, what does the ARC stand for? And I had mentioned earlier, it's not an acronym.
Yeah.
And when we were founded, we asked people not to use the R word. But by means of explanation, we were founded as, even by the parents whose children were being served, as the Association for Retarded Children.
That's right.
And then as their kids grew up, it became the Association for Retarded Citizens. And somebody who has a 70 IQ or lower knows what they're being called. You understand?
Oh, yeah.
And this is a very offensive word for somebody who
Sure.
can grow, who has a job, who really understands what's going on. Our perception was the problem. We believed that people couldn't learn because of their IQ score. And if somebody locked you and not me in a closet and didn't give us any books or any education, we would be helpless too.
You look at Helen Keller, who is blind and deaf, totally useless, until somebody came along and taught her how to speak and understand. The woman was just amazing. There was a brain stuck away in that head that just couldn't get out.
Well, and can you imagine being a person in that situation,
Yeah.
so misunderstood? I was talking to a guy a couple of years ago, and he said, "Oh, I got a job, working with people with disabilities." And he said, "I work with this guy. He can't communicate." And I said, "He can communicate. He doesn't talk." And I was at an art convention, and there was a facilitator who said, "You need to learn where the person's at." And every person with IDD who needs support is capable of hiring the person they want to work with them. And a woman raised her hand and she said, I have a son who's nonverbal. He has cerebral palsy. He can't walk. I have to tell you, I want to believe with all my heart that my son is aware enough to hire his own staff. Can you help me understand? I want to believe this. Can you help me understand what you're saying? I'm missing something. And the woman said, you're his mom. She said, I am. She said, when someone walks in the room, do you know if he likes them or not? She said, and the woman started to cry. She said, yes, now I understand. So we all communicate. Very few of us communicate the same. Ask anybody who's married.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'm
really,
a pro on that.
the trick is for all of us as human beings in our human family to meet one another in ways that allow us to connect.
Absolutely. You know, as a matter of fact, you mentioned the Ark. I don't know what year it was. I know it was many years ago. They were located in Preston.
I think you're right, yes.
And I think the name was across the top American Retarded Center.
Yeah.
And when they shut that down, they became the Ark.
Right. And
moved to Groton, I think.
that's why I say, yeah, please don't use the R word. No longer an acronym. People understand what that word means. As my little nephew says, he said to me, you know, when I first started coming to the Ark, I wasn't comfortable because people weren't like me, and I was a little frightened. But now that I've gotten to know them, everybody at the Ark has become my friend. And so what I tell my friends at school is somebody might not be exactly like you. They may not look like you. They may not communicate like you. But inside, their feelings are exactly the same.
Yeah. Now, do you get support from the state? Or?
We do contract work. And most of our funding dollars come as a contracted provider to the state. We provide services for about a third of the cost that the state could provide the services for themselves. You can imagine a family who maybe has the burdens of 24/7 care. That can be very difficult. Parents can't go to jobs. The rate of divorce is very high.
Yeah.
So we'll provide in-home supports. We'll provide the job training that I talked about before. Some people may live in a group home. Some people we might help set up their own apartment on a bus line. The reason we have fundraisers like the Pirate Party and like our road race over at Camp Harkness every fall is because we have the largest community life and advocacy program not just in southeastern Connecticut. I think it's the oldest one in the state, because once you make sure that people have job training and a house to live in and things like that, one of the things that people with intellectual and developmental disability will tell you when you ask what their biggest problem is that they are lonely. And I believe, Laura, is it 46%? Only 42% of people with IDD report having a friend outside their own family.
Oh, wow.
So the Community Life and Advocacy Program was founded by those parents so their kids would have something to do, so they'd have a social group. Of course, as the years have gone by, what we've learned is that people's needs are more intensive than that. Unfortunately, 80% of women with IDD have been sexually abused.
Really?
So we have a group called Voices, where women with IDD can talk about their experiences. They can heal. They can move on to trusting relationships. They can also learn how to be safe in relationships.
That was the quickest 25 minutes I think I've ever had here. We got 5 minutes left. And I got so many questions that I can't remember now. To put a child or person to work under your program, it's got to make that child feel fantastic, that he's really got a job to do.
You can't believe the difference it makes for people. I've seen people shuffling past my window almost catatonic.
Yeah.
Over a period of time with the right medication, the right behavioral interventions, these people will have expressions. A person that we served recently who had very serious behavioral issues, he recently won an award for his volunteer work with Meals on Wheels. He's a happy kid. He talks to you. You can have a conversation with him. And there was a time when people believed that that wasn't possible, and we now know it is.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. You go to some of the grocery stores now. I know Big Y hires people like that. And you watch these kids, and they pack the bag perfectly. You take somebody who's got a high IQ with it, that bag's just going to get full.
The rate of attendance, the length of time in a job, far exceeds that of everybody else. For people with IDD, people are more loyal to their employer. And so we should think about when we're shopping and when we're patronizing businesses, which businesses do look out for everybody in our community.
Many years ago when I was studying insurance, one of the things I had learned, and it's been 30 years, was that they were talking about hiring people or getting people to work. And they said if you take somebody with a disability and have them operate the elevators, that was when we had people operating the elevators, they will stop that elevator perfect every time. But somebody with a high IQ, you may have to step out, you have to step down. But the other guy would have that thing perfect every time.
Well, people know what it means to have a job, you know?
Yeah.
We're talking about a group of people who don't take anything for granted.
Yeah. I think what you do is fantastic. I think it's just, you don't get paid enough. And
Actually, the people who serve the people we serve, our employees, really do not. They've had flat wages for, depending on who you talk to, 5 to 20 years. Nonprofits really contribute a lot economically to our communities. I really appreciate your making that point, because it's very important that the direct support professionals are fairly treated by the state of Connecticut. I'm not sure that's the case at this time.
Yeah, I know some about it because of one of your workers that is a friend of mine, and I've seen her work, and she works hard.
People have to have multiple trainings.
Yeah.
They have to think on their feet. They're dealing with behavioral issues. They're dealing with health and safety issues. We're heavily regulated. You know, somebody hits you, you cannot hit back. You do not hit back. There are specific behavioral interventions. Somebody makes a mistake, there's an investigation. It can be very intensive work, very rewarding work, but intensive.
Well, if you want to go attend the pirate party, the number is on there, or the email is up there, and you can contact me, and you can contact them. I'll put you in touch with the Arc Center, and you can attend. If you don't want to attend, send them a check. They'll be happy to take that.
Absolutely.
And
any help you can give will be appreciated.
And so, it's a good organization. It's helping kids get better and be responsible, and it's something that we really need. I got an announcement. There are 2 more Fridays until Easter, and that means 2 more Fridays to get Pawcatuck VFW's now famous fish fry. And for information, please call 860-599-2404. After Easter, we'll be offering the fish fry once a month, and you can call and get the dates for that. The Ladies Auxiliary of the VFW is baking and selling Portuguese sweetbread for Easter. I just bought a loaf last night. I had some for breakfast this morning, and it's delicious. But you can call again, 860-599-2404 to order your bread. The loaves are only $7 each. You can pick up your order on April 3rd after 2 p.m. Give them a call and order some. They're another group that needs money. We're trying to do some work in the building. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be starting the new series of the farmers, vendors at the Denison Farm Market. And we will be discussing the differences between natural grown food, organic, and GMOs, and be sure to tune in. It'll be a second part of my show, and we're going to be doing books and things at first, and then we're going to be doing the Denison Market in the second half hour. And it's going to be very enlightening. We're trying to drum up some business for the farmers. Next week, my guest is going to be Brian Judd, who is the founder of Kappa. And Brian is also a marketing guru, and we're going to be discussing some new programs. Anyway, you should be reading. Cuddle up with a good book. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.